nationality that was put forth by both parties. But Tiffany was released by John Laurinaitis and was very affected by it. On a recent interview that Diva Dirt did with her several months back, she actually broke down and became somewhat emotional when she was asked by the host of Diva Dirt about her, release from WWE. She's not the only one who's gotten emotional about her release from WWE, because believe it or not, a lot of wrestlers love their jobs, and I can never emphasize on that enough. No matter if it's an independent wrestler or a WWE legend who hasn't wrestled in years, a lot of people love their jobs, especially the divas, and I can not only speak from experience, but I know a lot of them as well who have become very emotional over their release because they love what they do. No matter how much of a show it is, no matter how many theatrics are incorporated into the show, they love what they do. And it's very hard to put into words what it's like sitting there behind the microphone listening to these people talk about their releases, because it can get somewhat emotional. I mean, I had Lacey Von Erich here on ECW Entertainment Radio. Now, she was talking about her father, and we got on topic about, his death and, the motorcycle accident that her father was involved in, the Texas tornado, and she became very, very emotional about it and almost broke down crying during the interview. And I thought many times during the interview I was going to have to stop taping the session because it got emotional on more than one occasion. And the Lacey Von Erich interview that I had the privilege of presenting to you here on ECW Entertainment Variety Radio is an interview I still talk about, no matter if I do an interview with another wrestler or do an interview for another show. It's something I always talk about and something I haven't forgotten, and that's just an example of how emotional an interview can get. But in Tiffany's case, I've heard a lot of Tiffany's interviews on Monday Night Mayhem, Diva Dirt, and she gets emotional from time to time when the fact that she was released from WWE by John Laurinaitis, a family member of the legendary Legion of Doom. She gets very, very emotional over it, and it's very hard to put into words what it's like sitting behind your computer and having to listen to that. Now, I've never actually spoken to Taryn Trinnell personally on a personal basis, but I know from listening to her interviews that she gets very, very emotional when the subject of her release is brought up, and I can't blame her, because a number of wrestlers that I've had the privilege of interviewing, Lacey Von Erich is one, Amy Weber is another, Amy Zidian is another who had an emotional breakdown here on HEW Entertainment Radio. Emotional breakdowns that are related to releases are very common, just as divorces are in the professional wrestling industry. I'll even go back as far as when Billy Kidman and Tori Wilson filed for divorce back in 03-04, and Tori Wilson used the internet, her MySpace page at the time when MySpace was really popular for wrestlers to use as open forums to promote anything they had coming up, or just to give their fans updates through blogs. I think that it's very, very common to read about it or hear about it. And if you don't hear about it, then there's something wrong. Divorces and deaths are two of the most common things that we hear about from time to time when it comes to professional wrestling. And that's another thing I want to get into here very briefly here for this week's installment of HEW Entertainment Radio, how wrestlers, especially divas, use social networks like MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter to talk about what's going on in their lives. After they're released is when it really happens, because when you're under contract, you're bound to a legal document that says you can only discuss so much with your fans. You can't even respond to them to a certain extent. You can only talk to them a certain extent, and only so much is allowed. But when you're released, I think that's when you can really open up to your fans, and that's when the divas take advantage of the opportunity to sit behind their computer and use their Facebook blogs or their MySpace blogs or their YouTube accounts and really talk about it, no matter if it's through text or through video. And I remember when Tori Wilson finally got her release papers and her walking papers from WWE, a couple of months after that she stayed married to Billy Kidman while he still had his job with while he was actually not with the company. But I think that after realizing they couldn't be together because of so much traveling and everything, they just made the decision to go their separate ways and still remain friends. And I hope that's what Tiffany and Drew McIntyre make the decision to do. I hope they do remain friends, because they looked good together, I tell you, because I saw a lot of the Facebook pictures that Tiffany had on her Facebook and on her MySpace page, and they really looked good together despite some professionality that was exemplified by both parties. They really looked good together. They were, a cute couple, as they say in professional wrestling, just as good as Tori Wilson and Billy Kidman were together, and even back as far as Sonny and Skip. I think that they did a wonderful, wonderful job together as a group. We didn't get to see them work together on WWE programming, but they were a good group, and I think that it's very unfortunate that this had to happen. But like I said, Tiffany used the internet to open up to her fans and talk about her divorce a little bit. She didn't really go into much detail about it, but she finally came public about it a few days ago on one of her social networks pages. I'm not sure if it was Facebook or Twitter, but one of those two, and I think that it's very, very admirable, that quality of being open with her fans and actually being blunt about it. Is something that needs to be given credit for, because a lot of people will try to hide it, and she didn't do that. She didn't hide the fact that she was divorcing him. She didn't hide the fact that she was having some degree of difficulty dealing with the distance and the traveling and different things, and it's great that she was open about it, kind of like Tori Wilson was. Now, she kind of used the same method as Tori Wilson, where she didn't really go public with it through an actual audio interview or anything. She actually just used the ability to write in a blog about it. She usually hides behind a computer and writes about her feelings and stuff, but I think that it's great no matter how she did it. At least she was public about it, she was open about it, now everybody knows. But one of the cons of everybody knowing now is when she does an audio interview for Diva Dirt or Monday Night Mayhem again, or probably even this radio program in the near future, when she's asked about her divorce, she's going to have to learn to deal with it because everybody knows about it. So maybe it was better in the long run for her to remain quiet about it than to become open about it, because now everybody knows about it. Everybody's going to talk about it, no matter if it's in an interview with her or not. Everybody's going to write about it. But the thing is that these radio show hosts, journalists, and columnists need to realize is when you comment on a situation, that's all you're really doing, no matter if it's a death of a professional wrestler, no matter if it's a divorce that you're documenting. You weren't there, you don't know the real reason or the actual reason behind the divorce, so the only thing we can do as radio show hosts, columnists, and journalists, myself included, is comment on the situation because we don't know the extent of it. The only ones who know the actual reasoning behind it are Drew McIntyre and Tiffany, and in time they will become public about it just as they did about the divorce. The reason for it will remain under wraps until it becomes 100% public, and then we'll be able to write down and document the actual reasons behind it. But the same thing can be said about the Chris Benoit situation. We can call him, a murderer and call the situation a double suicide and murder. Double murder-suicide, but I think that, as long as we weren't there, the only thing we can do is talk about it and document it because we don't know the extent or the reasoning behind why Benoit did what he did. And the same thing can apply to Drew McIntyre and Tiffany, only in a different light. We weren't there. The only thing we can do is document it, and that's something that the radio show hosts, columnists, and journalists need to realize. We need to give her a break and give her time to have this all sink in, have reality sink in, and then she'll become public about it when she's ready. And I think the radio show hosts, columnists, and journalists really need to realize that. And, I respect the fact that she used her Facebook and her Twitter account to be open about it. I really, really admire the fact that she didn't hide behind a closed door about what was going on in her life. She just bluntly said, I'm divorcing Drew McIntyre after being with him several months, and I have my reasons for doing so. And I believe she actually hinted what some of the reasons were on the Twitter or the Facebook account that she has. One thing about Tiffany's booking agency, it's very hard to get a hold of them. I'd love to have her here on HEW Entertainment Variety Radio to talk about it, and probably in the next few months it will happen, her appearing here on the show. But one thing about her booking agency and her people, you can contact them through her Facebook, through her MySpace, through her actual website even. I made 3 different attempts to contact Tiffany, and nobody, myself included, has been able to get a hold of her. I've even, talked about it with different radio show hosts. They themselves have had a very difficult time trying to get a hold of Tiffany, so it's not strange not to be able to reach her and establish some form of contact. But I've tried to contact her through her Facebook, through her Twitter, through her official website, through her MySpace, and have had no luck doing so. So it's very hard to get a hold of Tiffany's people. So I want to put it out there to Tiffany's people to actually eventually respond to some of my inquiries and the inquiries of other people, because I know that she is very much wanted on radio shows. She's in such high demand, not as high demand as The Rock, who generated $86 million or anything from Fast Five, but she's in very high demand for interviews and written interviews and media appearances. So I want to put it out there to Tiffany's people to get the ball rolling and start replying to some of these inquiries, because it's very difficult to get a hold of her, and I'd love to have her on here to talk about it. But really, that's all that's going on in her life right now, this divorce story that I saw coming, kind of like I saw the death of Andrew Martin coming. You could tell by the blogs that Andrew Martin used to write on his MySpace. He used to write his blogs in his About Me section so everybody would read it. Upon going to the official MySpace of Andrew Martin or his official website, the first thing you would come upon would be these blogs that he would write about a tour or something going on in his life. And that's basically what he used to do, and I used to read his blogs, and from reading his blogs I made the assumption eventually this guy is going to have something happen to him, and hopefully at that time I was hoping it wasn't going to be his eventual death. But my assumption was correct, my analogy of his blogs were correct, and he eventually ended up dying at the age of 33, 34, so, you know, hopefully it doesn't, this situation between Tiffany and Drew McIntyre doesn't cause Drew McIntyre to do anything absolutely unprofessional, or Tiffany for that matter. I don't think it's as severe as that, but one way you can tell if something is going on behind closed doors with a professional wrestler, one of the things that I have made a mental note of, is you can easily tell by reading their blog or their blurbs or anything that's written down and documented. One thing that you want to do, and I'm going to put that out to the radio shows, columnists, and journalists who may be listening to that, even listening to this, even the fans, I'm going to put it out there to you. One way you can tell if a wrestler is going to eventually make away with himself, attempt suicide, or eventually die, is by documenting and reading their blogs and their blurbs in text format. You don't need to listen to radio interviews, because a lot of wrestlers talk a lot of shit behind a microphone. What you need to do is read their blogs or read their blurbs, anything they write down in the form of text.